Do you like the Oakland A's? Are you a fan of the Golden Knights? Do you love the Los Angeles Chargers? Well then, my friend, you're in the right place. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show with your host, Jake the Snake Silva, brought to you by the Spotlight Sports Network.
Well, all right, folks. Well, you know exactly what time that is. It's my best for last. Love doing it here up on the show. So the Stanley Cup playoffs start this weekend. And we've got all of our teams. Everybody is set. The teams that ended up making the cut, congratulations. And play on, play well. And those that didn't end up making the cut, better luck next year. And there's definitely a lot of changes for next season. So, so in my best for last, I'm going to be filling out the Stanley Cup playoff bracket for the 2021 season. It's completely different than what last year gave us. The fact that we were only about 6 to 8 games left of the regular season, and then we ended up coming to a halt due to COVID reasons. But they came back with qualifiers. There were a couple of teams that had the qualifiers, and then we started to have our Stanley Cup playoffs, and it was a lot of fun last year. This year's completely different. There were 4 different divisions altogether. All 4 teams that make it in each of those divisions, they're playing each other. So there are 2 series that are going on, and then you have the matchup between both of the bests in that division where they face off to where eventually they'll make it into the semifinal, and that's where we're going to have our Stanley Cup final. It's completely interesting about how all of this is really going to pan out. I'm not sure how well this may work, but we're going to give it a shot. It's a lot of fun. Playoff hockey is always the best, and mind you, this will be the last and official time that we'll ever see hockey on NBC. It had been years and years and years. I loved watching with Doc Emmerich and a lot of really, really talented commentators who have commentated the sport. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a long run with NBC. But now, of course, the NHL has agreed to the terms with Turner Sports. So let's enjoy this as much as we possibly can. It's going to be a lot of fun, different changes coming up. So we're going to start things off with the Central Division. Here we go. So the first matchup that we do have is the Carolina Hurricanes against the Nashville Predators. So, of course, both of their best, Sebastian Aho this year, in 55 games that he has played, he's scored 24 goals, 33 assists, and 57 points altogether. Sebastian Aho is an absolute threat when it comes to passing, offensive, just creating the offense, creating space and opportunities for guys to score goals. The Hurricanes have been lethal with that. Not to mention, too, the defense was a little better. The goaltending, I think, is kind of questionable to me. But, however, Alex Nedeljkovic, he was actually very impressive. 15-5-3 with a 1.9 goals against average and a .932 save percentage. And he was absolutely really, really good. But, of course, it's not going to be easy on the other sides. Jussi Saros, 21-11-1, and had a save percentage of 0.927. So, but the only thing about Nashville is that there has been times where they kind of seem like the offense was a little bit streaky. But there are some good names: Colton Sissons, Matt Duchene, Roman Josi. Lots of real good names there up in Nashville. But if you look at how the season series was, Carolina beat them 6-1, and it's been unfortunate for Nashville. They were able to punch their ticket in that last spot in the Central Division. I feel like that this matchup might go to at least potentially 6. I think Nashville is going to get lucky enough that they're going to end up winning some games. There may be times where Carolina may need to take a little bit of a break, but I feel like Carolina is going to move on in 6 games against Nashville, so they're going to be moving on. And meanwhile, we've got the Florida Panthers against the Tampa Bay Lightning in the Central. So this is interesting to me. The Florida Panthers have looked completely different. Jonathan Huberdeau has been on a complete different level. really, really good what we saw from last year in his performance, and he really capitalized this year. 20 goals, 41 assists, and 61 points out of the 55 games he's played. But Tampa Bay, this has been a completely different look for them. The fact that they lose Nikita Kucherov for the season to begin with, but everybody's been trying to stay consistent. I mean, Braden Point, Mikhail Sergachev, all these young kids are all trying to step up at least at the best time possible. But you can't disregard of how clutch that Andrei Vasilevsky can be. Now, of course, on the other side of things, Sergei Bobrovsky, he's been used to Tampa Bay's threatening force the second that he was there in Columbus. And then the second he took the deal with Florida, it's looked completely different. The first year was not going to be as solid, but that's okay. Second year was going to be completely different. Florida's up into the playoffs. I just feel like, to me, Tampa Bay is going to last this thing through 6 games. Florida is good. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Florida is good, but there still are some pieces that need to be filled. And I think ultimately, here's what's also a crazy stat to even take away. I mean, in the season series, they were 5-2-1 against Tampa. But mind you, Tampa Bay is fresh off of a Stanley Cup championship last year. They worked up on a bunch of things, but they do have their experiences. They do have, they've got a lot on the line. So Tampa is going to do whatever it takes to win these games, but I feel like it's going to come up to 6. So Carolina beating Nashville and Tampa beating Florida. So that leaves you with Tampa and Carolina. I think this settles the score right here. This has been a really, really impressive season series for at least the two of them. Carolina has been really, really good with their puck passing skill, and their defense has actually gotten much, much better. The goaltending is what's going to be the takeaway in this series, but I feel like it's going to go to a long-distance 7. And I think Carolina, in my honest opinion, with the way that Tampa has looked, Carolina looks like they're going to have at least the edging on this one. So it just seems like, to me, the offense has clicked at the right time. Everybody stayed consistent with their passing. They're on the same page. But I think Tampa at this point does not have exactly like that oomph that we were all kind of expecting from this year. So it kind of seems like the brakes were put on this year. And sometimes that does happen with teams. I just think that at this point, Carolina, they're settling the score, 7 games altogether, and I think Carolina wins the Central itself, and that's the team that's going to represent. So let's go now to the East Division. That's going to consist of the Pittsburgh Penguins and the New York Islanders. This has been a really, really tough outing for the Islanders this year against Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh needed to revamp. They needed to at least get a few more goal scorers. They also needed to get their defense together. And let's also not forget, Tristan Jarry, good. I think still needs improvement in order for him to be an elite goaltender, but he's been real good this year. 25-9-3 with a 2.75 goals against average, and it only saved .909 in his percentage. So there have been times where he's actually been pretty solid, but you've got to think about how clutch that New York really can be. Just because the season series went about its way, where Pittsburgh was 6-2 and New York was only 2-4-2, does not mean that exactly sums up the entire series. Mind you, New York upset Pittsburgh the last couple of years, the last 2 seasons. So it just seems to me that the Islanders, as long as everybody is healthy, J.G. Padjo, Josh Bailey, there's been there's a couple of real good names, Matthew Barzal. So I just think that the Islanders, this could go to 7. And if I had to really kind of think who's really got the edging on this, I have to go with the Islanders. I mean, Semyon Varlamov, something about this goaltending for the Islanders is just plain weird to me. They have been solid with their goaltending the last couple of years. They had Robin Lehner, Thomas Greiss, Semyon Varlamov comes around, and then Greiss stayed put. Greiss moves. Then you have Eli Sorokin, who comes in. This has been a completely different identity. And Barry Trotz, mind you, coaching experience really matters in this game. So I think Barry Trotz being in this position with the Islanders is going to find a way to make things work, and I guarantee you that the offense for the Islanders is going to click at the right time. 7 games, but I do think the Islanders make it through. So that's going to bring us to the other side where it's going to be the Washington Capitals and the Boston Bruins. What a year that it has been for both these clubs. Washington, here's what's interesting about it. This is actually the first time in Alex Ovechkin's career that he has not scored more than 30 goals. First time in his career in a long time. They still are keeping themselves consistent, but my only thing is I don't know how solid Vitek Vinnycek really is. I don't know how solid of a goaltender that he can be, but we know exactly how good Tuukka Rask can really be in the playoffs. Boston at this point, I thought this year they were going to be lacking on defense, but I was wrong. They managed to do everything well. Offense started to click with Brad Marchand, David Pastrnak, Patrice Bergeron, Charlie Coyle. They figured it out. Bruce Cassidy really has put this group really solid. But I think all of this is going to lean more on Tuukka Rask making the important saves against this offense of Washington. You just got to find ways to stop Ovechkin, Nicholas Backstrom, and mind you, Zdeno Chara is on the other side with Washington. The only person that knows Boston's system well is going to be Chara. So that is what's the takeaway for Washington, but I feel like this is going to go to 6 games. Boston makes it through on top, and I think at the end of it, Washington's going to continuously make adjustments for them to stay solid as a group. But I just think that this year did not have enough of the firepower. But it's not to say that they're not a solid team. They really are a solid team. But I just think Boston, with the momentums that they've had, and they had to get over the hump in the last couple games. But I feel like they're in the best position where they can make that happen. So that leaves you with the Islanders and the Bruins. So I just feel like New York, with the way that things are looking, the old New York and Boston feel, this seems to me like it's going to be one that's going to make a lot of noise, and a lot of noise in 7 games. I feel like the New York Islanders are one team that they're going to be the surprise through this playoff run. They've had some very, very impressive games this season. And I know a lot of people have had some questions about whether or not the health was going to be a concern or the consistency. But I'm looking at it from all angles. And I truly feel like that the Islanders, they're going to pull something off. 7 games is what I'm giving this against Boston and New York. I feel like that the New York Islanders are going to make this work. So 7 games, they're going to represent the East. Now let's go over to our good friends up north of the border, all the Canadian teams, as we look at the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens. This is a game that I think, I just feel like this is going to be a wrap. This has not been the same Carey Price that we've seen in a while. And mind you, Toronto made a ton of moves this year. This was one that I thought was incredible. They got a lot of experience amongst them. Jason Spezza, Joe Thornton. They then acquired Nick Foligno. This is a team that's got all the experience in the world. Former captains from former teams. Jack Campbell, by the way, was the absolute ace in this goaltending. 17-2-2 with a .211 goal average and a .923 save percentage. Jack Campbell, who came out of Los Angeles, has been an absolute force for Toronto and what they needed. It's not to say that, Frederik Andersen is not bad, but he's not elite. And I feel like that the Maple Leafs, they got both those goaltenders that they'll utilize, but you're going to expect a lot of that force to be reckoned with against Jack Campbell, and he's going to do whatever it takes to make the saves, make the blocks, and really put Toronto in a very, very good position. And think about it. This offense with Mitch Marner, Will Nylander, John Tavares, and Austin Matthews. I mean, I see what I'm looking at with Montreal, but I just feel like it's going to be too much for them. And Carey Price has to be ace on, behind the net. I think you're going to ask too much out of Carey Price, so I feel like that this is one that's going to wrap super fast in 5. Toronto's going to make it through against Montreal in 5 games. I just don't see that the Habs really making it through. I just feel like the offense at times, what I've seen the last couple games, kind of seems streaky, and it kind of seemed like the goaltending was a little bit off. So that is important when you come into the playoffs, and you have to be solid on goaltending. There's no excuses. You just got to stay solid. So on the other side, you got the Edmonton Oilers and the Winnipeg Jets. What more do I really have to discuss with this game? I mean, this matchup from here, Winnipeg, when Connor this is my bad feeling about the Jets. You're going to lean everything on Connor Hellebuck to really make you the important saves to save games. I think he's going to get tired out because eventually that offense really has to click. Outside of Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor, it has been a streaky offense for Winnipeg. Scheifele's the only person in 55 games, 21 goals, 40 assists, and 61 points. Scheifele's been one really good force for them, but it's not going to be enough when you have to deal with the speed of Connor McDavid, who I think is a Hart Trophy winner this year. The way that he's performed, 33 goals, 69 assists, and 102 points in only 54 games he's played this year, it's more than incredible. It's amazing. But by the way, Mike Smith I think he's actually improved himself with goaltending. A lot of people wanted to sell me on Mikko Koskinen, but he was only costing you games with the second that, you get into positions in the periods where goals are being let off left and right. So I feel like the Oilers are going to wrap this thing up in 5 games also, and you're going to get an Edmonton-Toronto series. So, and again, Winnipeg, they just have to figure out with their offense. They need to get on the same page. So I feel like Edmonton, for the first time I'm ever saying this, they're going to win a series for once. But I really do feel good about this one in 5. So that's going to leave Toronto and Edmonton in that semifinal for the division. It's been very, very impressive for both sides, and the way that they've really kind of strung about has been incredible. But ultimately, Edmonton's going to get as far as they possibly could, but I feel like in 7 games, Toronto's going to win this. The experience, the leadership, and I think ultimately smart coaching on top of it has to work. Edmonton is good. You can't deny it. There still are some things that they have to readjust, but they're not that far away, mind you. They are not that far away. But Edmonton in positions like this, you got to prove to me that you've got the firepower, you've got exactly what you need to really be a solid outing in the playoffs. But who knows? It will be very incredible to see how this all really lands out. So, so of course now we're gone on to the West. So the ones really quick that we're recapping. So representing the Central, you've got the Carolina Hurricanes. Representing the East, you've got the New York Islanders. And then representing the North, you've got the Toronto Maple Leafs. So here we go to the West division. So the first game we got the Vegas Golden Knights against the Minnesota Wild. This is a very, very tough outing, folks. Really, really impressive. Not to mention this has been exciting. Both these teams, of course, had been scoring goals left and right. I think only the Golden Knights were only 1 goal less, that they've scored against Minnesota. But Minnesota's been having their number at 5-2-1. And let me just tell you, Kirill Kaprizov has been absolutely ecstatic. 55 games, 27 goals, 24 assists, and 51 points in his rookie season. The kid's playing out of his mind. But what's very lethal is just the speed, the precision, the passing. One thing that Vegas really has to cut off. I'm still to this day very confident about it. But Marc-Andre Fleury, 26 and 10 with a 1.9 or 8 goals against average, and his save percentage is good. You're going to get a lot what you can with Marc-Andre Fleury and with Robin Lehner. So that's That is the key, is that both these goaltenders have to be solid. It's like a baseball rotation. They've been really, really good all throughout this year. The William M. Jennings trophy winners for best goaltender duos. I feel like the Golden Knights are going to make this through in 7 because Minnesota is going to give them a bang for their buck. This is going to be a back and forth type of series. One's going to end up scoring out the other, and vice versa. But I feel like that the Golden Knights will have because mind you, they're going to have everybody there. So they are loaded top to bottom on their roster. They got plenty of speed. They got plenty of offense, aggression. They're ready to roll with this. So the Golden Knights will make it through in 7 games against Minnesota. Now we're on to Colorado and St. Louis. I've been seeing this now for the St. Louis Blues. It's definitely a challenge, but man, it hasn't it honestly, you couldn't ask for a better outing than this. But what a year though that Philip Grubauer has really been having. 39-1, 1.95 goals against average, and his save percentage is high. This has been a very, very impressive outing for him this year. But given what the pressures and the expectations are for the Colorado Avalanche, it's high. They made all these trades for Devin Taves. They got a couple of their former Avalanche teammates back, Carl Soderberg. And Andrei Burakovsky has been an absolute ace for them in the hole, even for Nazem Kadri. So you're going to expect a lot of explosiveness and aggression in their offensive side, especially with that dangerous first line, McKinnon, Landeskog, and Rantanen. It's not going to be easy to hold them up, but St. Louis, mind you, they won the Stanley Cup 2 years ago, but they've had a solid group. I just don't feel like it's the same energy that we've seen before. So I'm giving this about 6 games, and Colorado, I feel like, is going to have the momentum to move forward. It's going to be a fun, action-packed series between the two of them, but given the urgency and given the expectation for the Avalanche, they're going to last this thing through. And I feel like St. Louis is going to get overpowered. That's just the reality I look at it. So now you've got Colorado and Vegas, the one series I think everyone in America had been waiting for in the hockey world. 2 very strong franchises, very aggressive on offense. Both, I think, have real good goaltenders, and not to mention the defense is very, very solid. The Alex Pietrangelo signing was huge for Vegas. The Devin Taves trade, as I mentioned before, was huge for Colorado. So a lot is on the line on both these teams, and they're fighting it vigorously. This is way over the top-notch stuff. It's going to be exciting to watch in the West. But I feel like this game's going to go to 7 games, and if you really had to ask me who really pans through, I feel like it's going to be the Vegas Golden Knights here. This has been the type of year. Now, even though that the expectations are super high for Colorado to making it to the Stanley Cup, it's a close but no cigar type of feel. But in the end, you're looking at both these teams. They're both stacked. They both have something to play for, and I truly think that when it's all said and done, you're going to be looking at. You're going to be looking at all of this. So it's very interesting how we're going to see how the playoffs really run this out. But so in the West, you've got the Vegas Golden Knights. The North, you got the Toronto Maple Leafs. In the East, you got the Islanders. And then right there in the Central, you've got the Carolina Hurricanes. So this is how it's going to work. So the East are facing the Central while the West will face the North. So let's go to that side of things. The Toronto Maple Leafs against the Vegas Golden Knights. Vegas has had a history against Toronto where they have come away with games. There have been times where they've actually let some slip by. But mind you, this has been the back and forth type of thing. Now, on the other side of things, this is what's different about the playoffs. Only the teams within the division have seen each other. That's it. They've not went outside their division. They don't know exactly what else that they're really kind of getting themselves into. So Vegas is going to have their hands full. I feel this is going to be 7 games on both ends. I really do. I just think that the second that you don't face an opponent for a whole year in the regular season, and then you face them in the playoffs, you're gonna be on your toes. You're gonna be on your heels the whole time. So I think Vegas is gonna make it through its 7 games against Toronto to punch their ticket into the Stanley Cup final. Second time in franchise history that they'll represent. But this has been odd. It's been really, really odd how they put this bracket together. But again, all this experience for Toronto, and it's panning out in a positive way. It really, really is. And I know a lot of people would love to watch Joe Thornton hoist the Stanley Cup and much more. But you have to think about the aggression in the offense. You got to think about how the defense is going to stack up, and the goaltending has to be solid. Jack Campbell's been really good. But let's just see when the stakes are high, when you're in, a conference final like this, I'd like to see the intensity from it. So that's now going to bring us to New York against Carolina. So both these teams, what's interesting about it, and this is the upper edge, Carolina has more of the precise passing. New York kind of has at least a little feel of the goaltending. And then not to mention some good premier defense. But that's also going to be 7 games too. Both these teams really do express different amounts of offense. It's very impressive. But I think if you had to come out to a grinder, I got to go with the Carolina Hurricanes here. Their passing, the passing this year has been superb. And everybody, they're going to find ways to score goals. They're going to find ways to really score goals, open opportunities up. Andrei Svechnikov, and there's a couple of real good names. Sebastian Aho. This offense is very interesting to me. They're not the type that they could just go ahead, be aggressive, and score at it fiercely. They're precise about it, and that's where I think is very lethal to them. So we've got that narrowed down. So Vegas beats Toronto to move in, and then Carolina beating New York. So that's going to leave us with a Vegas-Carolina Stanley Cup final. One that I think is very interesting, but I think if you looked at it all together, Carolina, the passing, a little bit, and the teamwork, but I just feel like this game's going to go all the way to 7. And think about this. This is a fun type of matchup, but I think Vegas, they're going to narrow this down this year. I know a lot of people are just like, Jake, you're a homer. Come on, dude. You really think the Vegas Golden Knights are going to... I really am serious about this. From top to bottom of their roster, it's mixture of veteran and young. It's also really good, aggressive scorers. And not to mention the defense got better. Pietrangelo was a huge steal. Shea Theodore still staying consistent. Alec Martinez playing really good defense. So that's going to be the outcome of this, is the defense is going to play harder, and then the goaltending between Marc-Andre Fleury and Leonard is going to be how I would anticipate it. It's really how I would anticipate this. So I would hope that we get a fun series out of this. So mind you, this is the kind that you're looking at right now, and as we've kind of broke this down bit by bit, piece by piece, I'm very confident in this. So I like the look of it. I think it's rather impressive, but I feel like the Vegas Golden Knights are going to bring the Stanley Cup home for the first time in their franchise history. You're going to see this thing you're going to see this thing down the street in Las Vegas Boulevard, right there at the Welcome to Las Vegas sign. And I just think that they've really put the pieces together. I truly think they put the pieces together. I really like how I just really like how all of this really panned out. It's not to say for the rest of the teams, because Colorado, we know, has all the pressure on their shoulders, but it's all about the force of momentum in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It really is. If you're the kind of team that you're not quite sure whether or not if this team really does have a lot of the firepower and a lot of the strength and abilities to really move through in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Again, this is very impressive. So I loved how this bracket went. So that's where I'm going with it. So finalizing all of this up for all of my witnesses here, the way that I'm looking at the Stanley Cup playoffs, I've got Colorado beating St. Louis in 6, Vegas beating Minnesota in 7, Toronto beating Montreal in 5, Edmonton beating Winnipeg in 5, New York beating Pittsburgh in 7, Boston beating Washington in 6, Carolina beating Nashville in 6, and then Tampa beating Florida in 6, and then I have Carolina beating Tampa in 7, Islanders beating the Bruins, full 7 games. Then you have Toronto and Edmonton. I have Toronto beating Edmonton in 6. And then Vegas against Colorado, I have them beating them in 7. Vegas moving on. Then it's Vegas and Toronto. I have them beating them in 6 games. Then I have New York and Carolina. Carolina will beat the Islanders in 7. And then right there, Vegas beats Carolina in 7 in the final. So that's where I'm looking at it. Vegas Golden Knights will be your Stanley Cup final winners. They'll be your Stanley Cup champions. So that's where I'm going with that. I'm really excited to see how this playoff goes. This is a very strange and interesting playoff, but it's going to be a lot of fun. But good luck to all the teams. I'm going to be watching. I'm going to be watching right there, right on the comfort of my couch. Probably going to end up watching the playoffs with my family as well. And I'm also going to be doing some play-by-play commentary, so you guys do not want to end up missing that also. So it's going to be a lot of fun, guys. I'm really excited about this.